You are now listening to the Sports Podcast, brought to you by the CollingsThodeNetwork. We're your host, Curtis Collings, and
Nolan Thode. Today is our first episode recording, so long time coming though. Curtis and I, we've been friends for a while, but both big sports fans, and we've always talked about having a sports podcast just because we feel like sitting in front of two microphones and talking about sports for a little while, that's fun to us. That is not hard work or anything, and if it produces content that can be enjoyed by an audience, then it works for us. So here we are starting our first episode, so we're just gonna kind of talk about a little bit our goals for the podcast and sort of what direction we're heading in.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, and we kind of figured it'd be better to put it in front of microphones and upload it than just let it exist without being there for the world. So first episode, we kind of want to talk about football stuff, but that is not going to be what the podcast is. As by the title, it's more of a general sports podcast. We like to get into anything, really. But NFL Week 1 starting up, we have predictions for you and our thoughts and everything.
Yeah, so NFL, as we mentioned, but we're both huge hockey fans and basketball fans as well. So I'd say those three leagues are getting the most coverage, probably. The National Hockey League, National Basketball League, National Football League, and then Curtis is pretty knowledgeable about the MLB. I'm somewhat knowledgeable, so...
Yeah, with the season fading, it'll definitely be talked about more so especially with the
playoff push, and once playoffs get in, predictions, all that fun stuff.
So it'll get talked about, but sorry, baseball fans, come November, might not be seeing your sport too often on the sports podcast.
Yeah, but obviously if a big, any news breaks in the MLB, we're knowledgeable enough to know how it's going to impact the league and be able to talk about it and, try to make any predictions on what it's going to mean for the league. But yeah, definitely hockey, basketball, and football are our expertise.
So, especially week 1 here, as we spent the last weekend and yesterday watching NFL football. This is recorded on Tuesday the 13th for reference. So we've watched all of week 1, but all of our predictions and all of our player picks were made before the game started.
Yeah, so we have predictions for each of the divisions, playoffs, and then the award predictions for the upcoming season. So we wrote these. We're planning to record before the weekend, just didn't get around to it, and here we are now. But obviously the first week of the season has happened, and we'll kind of talk about how, we're feeling about our predictions, even after just watching the teams play one game.
Maybe some overreactions will happen, we'll see.
Oh yeah, it's pretty common for football fans to kind of, think week 1 matters so much, but when you look back in hindsight, it, it sets the tone, obviously, but, there's a lot of storylines and stuff like that come, week 4, week 5 are in the dirt and, don't really matter to the, grand scheme of the NFL season. But it is fun to, this is our first football to analyze, so that's kind of why everyone jumps on week 1 and, makes all their predictions.
I'm ready for some overreactions from these picks, so.
Yeah. So I guess we can just get into our standings predictions.
Yeah, let's do it. So a little division predictions, who we think's going to win our divisions, and then we'll get into playoff afterwards.
We can start with the AFC.
All right. I have mine sorted north, east, southwest.
I have it. Yeah, it just whatever one you want to go with first.
All right.
I'll take your lead.
Well, let's jump into the AFC North here with our Bengals, Ravens, Browns, Steelers. A very talented division. Browns and Steelers have a few issues at quarterback to address, but after Week 11, I could see Pickett and Deshaun both being very solid QBs for that. So that could be a four teams to definitely fear. I personally have the Bengals coming first in that division. While they did just lose to the Steelers, it was a close game, and they've dealt with some injuries and some subpar coaching in Game 1. So I can honestly see them bounce back and finish as an 11-plus win team easily. And I think in that division, that would be enough.
Yeah, I can see that as well. And, they were a PAT away from being the winners in that game in regulation. So I think their defense looked pretty solid. The Steelers' offense, from what I saw, struggled moving the ball, kind of benefited from a big play here or there, but didn't really have a consistent pace the whole game. And you talk about Kenny Pickett potentially being that starter at the end of the season. I know Mike Tomlin wants Trubisky to start as long as he can, just because I feel like he probably trusts the veteran a little bit more.
Former Pro Bowler.
Yeah, exactly. I think Mitch Trubisky is both underrated and overrated. I feel like
I can see that.
the general public underrates him, but I do feel like a lot of Trubisky
hate exists.
It does exist, but I'm saying the fans of Trubisky maybe overrate him a little bit. I feel like he's solid. He can start in the league, but when he was good with the Bears, they had some of the best defense in the league, and he wasn't really required to do all that much.
Yeah, good receivers, good running backs.
Mm-hmm. That was back when the Bears were good, even though they won this weekend. But my AFC North predictions, I have the Ravens in first, and then the Bengals, Steelers, Browns. Browns in last. I feel like it'll be a close division. Like I feel like all these teams can have 7+ wins for sure. But just with Jacoby Brissett being their starting QB, I feel like it does handicap them a bit. I'm excited to see what Deshaun brings to the team. And then having the Ravens in first, I feel like Lamar, he's betting on himself. He rejected his their contract extension proposal. I think he's due for a big year. Even in that first game, saw lots of improvements.
It's true. He has a lot to prove this year.
And yeah, like they dealt with a lot of injuries last year, and they also do have the easiest schedule of their division because they ranked 4th last year. So a couple easy games in there this season. I think the Ravens take that division.
Yeah, seeing the Jets week 1 helps a lot. Plus, they just did lose lost Fuller there to a torn ACL, which does suck. They really can't catch a break. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they had a similar. I believe it was. I don't think it was Marlon Humphrey. I think it was Peters towards the ACL at the start of the year last year.
I think before the season started.
They had him and Dobbins both go down pretty side by side. But yeah, a lot of injuries last year. If they can stay healthy, I feel like this Ravens team is poised to at least return to the playoffs, but I do have them winning the division.
I definitely see them return to the playoffs. I have them as my number 2 in that division too, but I think the Browns will finish above the Steelers because I like Brissett. I don't think he's that guy, obviously. No one thinks he's that guy, but I think for 11 games, he could hover around the 500, just below 500 mark. And then when Deshaun comes back, if they win 5 of 6, which I could see them happening. I'm not sure where their bye week is. They might have their bye week in that time. So even if they don't, they could go 5 of 6 in there and then compete with some of these lower teams, but I have them and then the Steelers. I just don't see the Steelers. This will be a growth year for the Steelers. They're going to have a lot of growing pains, I find. Very young team. So I see them next year making a huge leap. But
yeah, I think the Steelers' defense is still solid. They proved that on Sunday. But their O-line does need some work and just kind of chemistry within the offense. They just went from having Ben Roethlisberger, who was the quarterback for our entire lives, essentially, as football fans. So now, in the era post-Roethlisberger, they kind of need to figure out their identity on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, agreed. And now they're losing T.J. Watt, too, so it's going to be a major step back.
No, for sure. I do think some early season losses are in for the Steelers, but they always seem to be a good second-half team. They kind of push, and I still believe they haven't had a losing season under Tomlin.
They have not.
That's kind of the reason I had them over the Browns, too. I just feel like even though each year you kind of feel like it's going to be the year the Steelers take that step back, they refuse to.
Yeah, they keep finishing. Yeah, that's a great point.
Moving on now, I guess we can do the AFC East, which, in my opinion, is probably the easiest division winner. I have the Buffalo Bills.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming you do as well.
I do.
The Buffalo Bills are my favorite team, but that doesn't, there's no bias that goes into this pick. I think the Bills are the best roster in potentially the NFL, let alone this division. I think the other teams, I then have the Dolphins in second, Patriots in third, and the Jets in fourth. I think the Dolphins and Patriots could push for a wild card. I think the Jets are still a little ways away. But I think the Bills are just going to be the most consistent team over the whole season, whereas I feel like the Dolphins and Patriots can have stretches of, good and bad. But I am excited to see how the teams outside of Buffalo perform this season, for sure.
Oh, that's the most exciting part for me, as I'm not a Bills fan, but I still do have them pegged at the number 1 spot, and as Nolan said, probably the most consistent roster. Offense, defense, even their kicker is good, so I see no reason they don't come first, but it's the teams like the Dolphins, Patriots, and Jets that I'm most excited about. Young rosters, too. We don't really expect that much from teams like the Patriots to be young, but they have young receivers and a young quarterback who doesn't have too much to prove this year, I don't think. Mack in his second season, he could kind of just do whatever he does. So I don't think the Patriots, I don't have the Patriots too high, but I still have them above the Jets. My rankings for that goes Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, Jets. I see the Dolphins making a major step up offensively. Still not sure about that defense. Would have been really nice if they could keep a guy like Fitzpatrick too. That would be really useful, but I really like that offense. I think that offense alone will be enough to secure them the second seed in the AFC East for sure.
Mm-hmm. I love the Dolphins defense, actually. Xavier Howard, one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and then also just young. I feel like it reminds me a bit of, we'll get to them later, but the Panthers defense in terms of just like a lot of playmakers, a lot of young playmakers, and I think in a couple years' time it could be one of the better defenses in the entire league.
Agreeable. Very prone to mistakes though.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they'll have their games, when...
Oh, just had a great game against the Patriots.
Had a great game against the Patriots. And, they did enough. The offense didn't need to go crazy or anything, but I do think, bringing in a guy like Tyreek Hill, Chase Edmonds now, the lead running back, and then Jalen Waddle in his second season, I think this team may be handicapped by Tua a little bit, just because, I feel like there's only so much you can do, but I'm ready for him to blow me away and have this Dolphins team be a real scare in the AFC East for years to come.
Oh, yeah. I've Tua projected to do big things this year. I could see him over 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, even with this young and exciting offense. I also really like McDaniels, head coach there. So I think there's going to be major improvements. I think Tua is going to surprise everyone who doubts him, in all honesty.
Yeah.
There's too many Tua haters nowadays anyways.
Yeah, it's just, I think the deep ball is really one of the bigger weaknesses of his game, where a lot of people pay too much attention to that just because he has guys like Hill and Waddle where, the plays where they can, get that separation and be open for the deep ball is kind of, their signature stuff. So we'll see how it works, but I do have them second in the division, and when we get to the playoff predictions and standings predictions,
we'll see where they
wild
fit.
Card
we'll see where they fit with the rest of the AFC.
Mm-hmm. Now we can do let's do the South.
Yeah, I'll get to the South.
Save the West for last.
So West is pretty much the main event of the whole NFL here. So we'll talk about the South real quick because I feel like it's a 2-team race. The Jags and Texans are completely out of this for me. It's gonna be fully between the Colts and Titans, and personally, with the addition of Matt Ryan, I see the Colts edging out the Titans for that top spot. I don't trust a Tannehill-led team going into his age 33, maybe 34 year. He's a guy that relies a bit on his legs just as much as his arm and his brain, so it's going to be tough for them. But Derrick Henry could make a massive comeback and kind of surprise everyone, but Colts first. Too talented on D, too good at offense. Jonathan Taylor was still huge, had 30 carries in week 1, and that receiving core has only gotten better.
Mm-hmm. This division, I have the Colts in first as well. Titans in second, then Jaguars, then Texans.
That's the same as mine.
I just think Matt Ryan has another good season left in him. I think if Wentz could, I feel like a Wentz to a Matt Ryan was the difference from this team being a playoff team last year. A lot of people expected them to.
I know. One went away.
One went away, lost to the Jaguars in Week 18. But yeah, I think the Colts probably have the best team in this division. I think I'm excited to see what Matt Ryan does. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor was the Offensive Player of the Year last year. Coming in this season, I feel like people are expecting him to do the exact same that he did last year. Maybe takes a bit of a step back.
I'm expecting a little step back, but pretty much from his point of view, athletically, talented,
offensive line still very good, and then as you said, it's a good fun defense that can make a play when they need them to. So yeah, I think that division, and then when you look at the Jaguars and the Texans, I think they're both in rebuilding parts of their franchises, but they're also exciting. Doesn't mean that the Jaguars and Texans won't be fun to watch this year.
Very young.
Jaguars, I'm really excited about their team. A lot to prove. Trevor Lawrence, pretty bad rookie season. A lot of interceptions, so ball control and stuff like that, I think that'll be important. And yeah, just see him take those steps to getting more on track to where he was when he was at Clemson, and people were expecting him to be the next great NFL QB.
Yeah, agreed. Especially with just that offense has just such boomer bust potential on a week-to-week basis. You can see especially a guy like Kirk go off for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns maybe some weeks, and it wouldn't be out of the blue to expect that, but it also wouldn't be out of the blue to expect a 3-interception game from Trevor Lawrence this year, but they'll be very exciting.
Yeah, I guess we can move on to the West now, where you could really have this division in any order, and I think a lot of people would not bat an eye.
Yep.
4 very good teams, 4 potential playoff teams. I personally, bad timing coming after last night, but I have the Broncos winning that division, Kansas City in second, Los Angeles in third, and then the Raiders in last. I only say bad timing after last night because the Broncos did lose on Monday Night Football. However, I still think that over the course of the season, if they can figure it out, I like their roster probably more than the other 3 teams in this division. But again, it's totally up for grabs. And the Chiefs, Chargers looked great in week 1, so I could be biting my tongue with that prediction.
Yeah, and an upset loss to the Seahawks definitely does not help the case there. Me personally, I have the Chargers, then the Broncos, then the Chiefs, then the Raiders. I also agree. I was between the Chargers and the Broncos personally for who has the most complete roster out of those 4, and for me it defaulted to the Chargers. But the Broncos, as we'll talk about later, I could see them potentially having a huge season and off season. But the Chargers number 1, I think that in my mind is now a lock, especially what they just proved in week 1, winning a close game, a surprisingly close game to the Raiders, but only got close at the end, didn't really look like it was in contention throughout most of it. Herbert's too good. I think he's going to have too good of a season not to take that number 1 spot. And then the defensive additions that they made, especially Khalil Mack, it's going to be huge.
The Chiefs were surprising in week 1 just because losing Tyreek Hill, people would think maybe just naturally it would take them a couple weeks to figure out everything, now without him on offense. But 44 points, I feel like they're just as dangerous as ever. It's just the defense on Kansas City. Losing a guy like Tyrann Mathieu doesn't help. What are they going to be able to do? And I just feel like that's probably the reason why I have the Broncos first in that division, just because that's probably the defense that I like the most. Out of these 4 teams, you got a guy like Bradley Chubb, Justin Simmons in the secondary, Pat Surtain. I just really like the Broncos defense, and I feel like last night, a lot of people, Seahawks won the game obviously, but
they didn't score in the
Denver's
second half.
Defense, shut them to 0 points in the second half. They did everything that they could, and I think I think they're capable of giving every single team in the NFL issues on defense.
Oh, absolutely. I think to backtrack a bit, one of the most surprising parts too is that the Chiefs, while they scored 44 points, 5 throwing and receiving touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Mahomes was able to use his receivers and Kelsey and CEH especially in a way that we haven't really seen them before. And who knows, maybe we could see the loss of a genuine number 1 receiver like Hill and having more of a balanced system focused on Kelsey, CEH, and guys like Juju Scantling and Hardman. It might honestly lead to a better offense, and if that's the case, then I think the rest of the league should be very scared. But as you said, losing Matthew especially, it just hurts that D too much. It's not as complete as it used to, which is why I have the Chargers and Broncos over them. Chargers D, especially when, J.C. Jackson that's injured, once he comes back, that D and the Broncos D are going to compete for the best in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, Chargers have a lot of names on defense, now bringing in Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson. We didn't talk about the Raiders too much, but I do like their team as well. I think they can push for wild card, even being 4th place team in this division. Devontae Adams looks comfortable. I do like their offense. I think maybe they can spread it around a little bit more. Adams was taking in a lot of the receptions, as he tends to do, but keeping guys like Hunter Renfrow involved, and then obviously weapons like Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, I think will benefit the team. And then a defense that, is wishy-washy to me, the Raiders. I feel like, 1 week they could look like one of the better defenses in the league, and 1 week they, have a stinker.
No, agreed. One of the most balanced offenses in the entire league. 2 super consistent receivers, Darren Waller too, who this could be either a huge season or a very, very quiet season for him, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Got that extension before the first game, so good on him. 3-year extension,
getting
50
paid.
something mil. Do you want to do our 1 through 7 I guess we can just do NFC and we'll do all playoffs together.
Yeah, we'll do NFC now, and then we'll cover the playoffs.
First division you want to do in the NFC?
Yeah, we'll got the NFC North here with our 4 teams, and in my rankings, I got the Vikings coming in number 1. I think this is finally the year the Packers fall off. Fall off more so means come second in that division. Their Lions and Bears both aren't on either of their levels, but I have the Lions being better than the Bears, and hopefully, honestly, the Lions could be hovering around 500 this season. As a team that didn't win in its first 10-plus games, having them hover around 500 is exactly what I would hope for in that roster. Mm-hmm. And then we have the Bears still, who going through it.
Yep. I think this division is it's a 2-team race.
Yeah, much like
who can win the division.
Yeah, much like the AFC South.
I actually still have the Packers in first. I just feel like Aaron Rodgers has been able to do it, without Devontae Adams in the past. Games where he's missed. The offense still looks good. I do think, obviously, that'll hurt their offense, but their defense is still solid. They're still very well coached. They still have a great quarterback. I just feel like over the course of the season, they're going to figure it out enough to have the best record at the end of the day. But Vikings in second, not to say that the Vikings aren't a good team, aren't just right there with them. I'm very excited for Minnesota this season. And then the Lions, under Dan Campbell, year 2, I think they're a fun team to watch, fun team to root for.
A very fun team to root for.
And
never out of a game.
The Bears, just a very poor built roster for a competitive team. I think they're not in a competing stage right now, but Justin Fields, you want him to be the QB of the future. You want him to get that confidence, but you're not giving him a ton of weapons to do that with.
But I think a full season under the helm, it'll be good for him.
And then he's going to be running around a lot with very bad O-line in Chicago. That's something that they need to prioritize building if they're going to want to be competitive.
But I honestly think Fields could be that guy for them. He showed a lot of promise in week 1 there, especially just what he can do. But it's like you said, have to improve that O-line drastically.
Mm-hmm. Still some pieces on the defense, obviously, that are exciting, but they did get rid of Khalil Mack. They're kind of trending in a different direction from, the team that won the division. That was the last team besides the Packers to win the division, interestingly enough. But I still have the Packers, and then Vikings, Lions, Bears.
No, the Vikings for me they look too good going into the year. The new coach, new system, it was getting stale, and teams just kind of had it figured out. I think we could see a new level to Kirk Cousins, as he might take a late step in his career into becoming even better. He's kind of been an unclutch quarterback throughout his entire career, but a week 1 win over the Packers and Justin Jefferson looks like he's going to be the best wide receiver in the entire league this season. I think, for me, it's a no-doubter that the Vikings are going to beat the Packers in the division race.
Well, we shall see. It's a long season, obviously.
Very.
17 games, but the Vikings got the best of Green Bay in week 1. Moving on to the NFC South, I think we can do.
Yep.
First, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and second, I have the Saints, then the Panthers, then the Falcons. I think Tampa Bay bringing back Tom, they were expected to go without him this season, and I think maybe that would have opened the door for the Saints to win the division. I still think they can. I still think the Saints can push for it, but I just think that Tampa Bay is better. Some injuries on offense, like Chris Godwin coming into the season with an injury and then kind of re-injured it, or got a hamstring, I think it was, in week 1.
It looks like
he's going to be out for a bit, but now with Julio Jones, he'll be very exciting. No Antonio Brown drama. Todd Bowles now the head coach instead of the defensive coordinator. But lots of playmakers on that defense still. Devin White, Levante David, Winfield. It's just, I think, the best team in that division.
Yeah, I agree. I fully see the Buccaneers taking it back. As soon as the Tom Brady news came through that he was coming back, it was set in stone for me that they're taking that. And barring injuries or a huge collapse, I personally don't see a way the Saints pass them, especially the way the Saints played the Falcons in week 1. That defense did not impress me. They were giving up lots of plays, and lots of short plays too. Not just the big plays that would cost a game at the end. Plays throughout the entirety of the game that led it to be a 27-26 score, where it was a close game and a high-scoring game. And for that Saints offense, I think their defense has to carry to really compete with the Buccaneers. Then below them, I have the Panthers and Falcons. After week 1, the Falcons look way better than I was expecting. They might pass the Panthers for that third spot. Mariota especially was surprising.
Yeah, he hadn't been a starting quarterback since his days in Tennessee, unless he had a one-off start in Las Vegas that I can't think of right now.
The only thing I could think of him in Vegas is coming in on third down for QB runs.
Well, he had one game where Carr went out too, and he looked solid, but pretty much what you expect Mariota to do. He was good on the ground, and then made the throw when he needed to, but obviously not enough throws. Cordell Patterson looks nice.
He looks like he's picking up right where he left off.
Yeah, exactly. He was one of the surprises of last season, and then a lot of people, for whatever reason, kind of seemed to forget about the season he had last year, and he's looking like a solid running back, surprisingly.
Yeah, for me, there was a huge surprise. I was one of those people that were fading him just because I didn't trust that Atlanta offense, especially with Mariota now, but looks like I could be eating those words.
Yeah, looking for a guy like Kyle Pitts to take, that next step. Obviously, with Mariota, it could be different. He had more of a throw-heavy quarterback last year in Matt Ryan, so a little bit of a downgrade, I'd say, in terms of Pitts' perspective. But I still think that he's going to show that he has the tools. Reason he was drafted top 5 by the Falcons, he's just an explosive weapon.
Yeah, not a huge week 1, but, again, long season.
And then the Panthers, lots of questions around Baker, how that's going to work.
Yeah, especially with receivers. Robbie Anderson doesn't like Baker, or at least that's what we get from all offseason reports.
Christian McCaffrey now, hopefully having a fully healthy season.
Praying it's a fully healthy year.
But yeah, when he's on the field, he's one of the most impactful players in the league. But yeah, I still have Tampa Bay being the number 1 team there.
Yep, me too. Then moving on to the NFC East, one of the harder teams to predict, or divisions to predict. It is also a 2-team race of a division, though, because the Giants and Commanders are both firmly out of the race, in my eyes. Both had big wins, actually, in week 1. Commanders beating the Jaguars, so it's not so big, but once proved that he can be a legit starter there. And the Giants beating Tennessee by 1 point was a big upset for me, but even after week 1 and after what the Cowboys did, especially with Dak getting hurt, that'll be a bit more of a conversation. But for me, Eagles taking that division, and I've been thinking that for a little while now. Just a very complete team, and especially Jalen Hurts, he's going to take a huge step this year.
Yeah, I've been preaching it since, early offseason. Eagles were one of the better teams in the offseason, really strengthening their team, bringing guys like Bradbury, and A.J. Brown. They just look like, the most complete team in that division. And, everybody knows with the NFC East, you're not going to get a division winner 2 years in a row. So the Cowboys won it last year. And then even before the Dak injury, I had Eagles as number 1, but even more confident now that, the Cowboys are going to have to play with either Cooper Rush or, trade for someone.
Yeah,
maybe Jimmy Garoppolo comes in there.
Jimmy G in Dallas would be very exciting.
Yeah, I feel like he could fit into that culture, but they don't have a lot of money. Micah Parsons, still expecting him to pick up where he left off. The defensive rookie of the year last year, low-key DPOY candidate this year, but I think the Eagles are, I feel like they know their identity. I feel like they're going to lean on the run just because that's who Hurts is, but now he has more weapons in case they do need to throw in a game. Where last year against the Buccaneers in the playoffs, they kind of went down early and then were just unable to do anything the rest of the game.
Yeah.
So looking for the Eagles to be, not just a playoff team because they were last year, but, a legit,
full-on contender.
Threat in the NFC.
I think a legit Super Bowl contender this year.
Final division is the NFC West,
which, much like the AFC West, will probably be the tightest race.
Yeah, I think it'll be a tight race as well. I do think the Cardinals did take a step back, and not having DeAndre Hopkins for the first couple weeks of the season,
first 6,
is going to hurt them a lot. I do have the Rams in first place in that division. And then the 49ers in second place, Cardinals in third, Seahawks in first, which is funny because...
Seahawks in last.
Seahawks in last. I was getting to the point of the Seahawks are currently first in that division, being the only team to have won in week 1. But Rams just won the Super Bowl. I feel like even with the 49ers being a solid team, being that team that lost to them in the NFC Championship, I think they have a lot of questions surrounding Trey Lance offense. I think his arm is not Jimmy G's arm, and his football IQ, maybe not Jimmy G's football IQ, just because, veteran versus rookie kind of thing. But
I mean, it's a QB that's played under Belichick and Brady and Shanahan for a few years now.
Oh, yeah. And then, I think Shanahan's going to get the best out of Trey Lance, but I still think he is, a while away from, maybe not a while away, but I still think he's not there in terms of being an elite QB to lead the team. And then the Rams, I think they still have a very talented roster. Obviously, the Bills took care of them in their Week 1 matchup, but I think once they kind of figure out, where to go from now, they still have enough talent on that roster to be the number 1 team in that division.
Yeah, making a few coaching adjustments going into week 2 could be the difference between a team that scored 10 and a team that scores 30 next week.
Mm-hmm. And also just being able to play the Seahawks twice a week. Even though the Seahawks won week 1, I think Rams will beat the Seahawks both meetings. And then 49ers as well, another reason for them to not be that number 1 seed. I know I've made these predictions before week 1, but now Elijah Mitchell expected to miss, 2 months. Big part of that offense. They lean on the run. Now Debo's going to be getting more carries. Jeff Wilson Jr. steps in as that number 1 running back. I don't know if they have enough to win more games than the Rams.
Yeah, a lot of question marks for the 49ers this year. My projections actually had them coming first before the Eli Mitchell injury. I was projecting him to break out big this year, as Trey Lance might have had to rely on the run game more in his first full season. But now he's out, so it's going to be really on Trey Lance now to prove what the 49ers do this year. I had the 49ers, then the Rams, then the Cards, then the Seahawks. Cards, I don't feel like need much talking. They're pretty much the same team, but worse. Although the Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown pickup was huge, I don't think he's that much different than what Christian Kirk will do. So, yeah, they're my third team. Before the season started, this is also when I made this, so I thought 49ers, but losing to the Bears week 1 after we just kind of dogged on the Bears for a bit does not make this a good look, but the Rams, again, after that game against the Bills, they looked very bad. But it didn't look so much like a roster issue. It looked more like McVay kind of forgot what he was doing for half the game, as there were open players and good plays drawn up, it looked like, and just the wrong players were hit. Especially A-Rob. A-Rob, I see second week being probably the bounce-back player of the league next week.
You gotta hope. He was very disappointing after signing for all that money in the offseason.
Absolutely.
Do you want to do awards?
No, we'll jump into the playoffs a bit.
Okay. So, in the AFC, my number 1 seed, I have the Buffalo Bills, and then my number 1 seed in the NFC is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
My AFC number 1 seed is also the Bills. I feel like that's probably the consensus pick. For me, my number 1 pick in the NFC is the Vikings. I love this roster, and I really like the consistency that Kirk Cousins will bring to them. They're not a boom or bust team anymore. They're going to be what they're going to be. And for me, the team that beat the Packers week 1, I expect to see that team all year. Maybe not the performance Jefferson put up all year, but I think that's the Vikings team we're going to get this season, and that will be the 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, and then for my 2 seeds, in the AFC, I have the Baltimore Ravens, and in the NFC, I have the Green Bay Packers. I think, as I mentioned, Lamar due for a big season. And then, I think maybe 2 seed for the Packers. It'll be tough after losing in week 1. But I think just, the NFC is more up for grabs than the AFC in my mind. And I just feel like betting on Aaron Rodgers to be a top 2 seed in the NFC isn't a hard bet for me to make.
Yeah, that's agreeable. Especially that NFC looks wide open. 1 through 7 is just, they could change any order at any time. My 2 seeds going into this year are the Chargers, who I could see winning 13-plus games with that roster, especially once J.C. Jackson's back after week 4 or 5. And then in my NFC, I have the Eagles. Again, another one of my most improved teams in the offseason. I really think those 2 teams can prove a lot of people exactly. They could show a lot of people exactly who they are, and I see both as 2 seeds.
Mm-hmm. 3 seeds, I have the Broncos in the AFC. They're my AFC West winner. I feel like whoever comes out of that division, just because they're in that division, will sacrifice a bit of division losses, making them not a 1 or 2 seed. That's why I do have them at 3, but they're my division winner there. And then 3 seed in the NFC, the Eagles.
Fair pick. 2, 3, 4 for the NFC for me could really have been any of the teams.
Mm-hmm.
For my 3s, I picked the Bengals, who, coming off losing the Super Bowl, are going to be hungrier than anyone else. I think that'll catapult them into the top 3. Although with the T. Higgins injury, concussion looking like after week 1, it's a bit of a scarier pick. Especially losing to the Steelers, it looked like that should be a must-win. But I still have them as my number 3. Which will be a very tough matchup once we get into our matchups.
Number 3 for the NFC, you had...
And then my number 3 for the NFC was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. With Tom Brady back,
fair.
It's the Buccaneers.
Makes sense. And then 4 seed in the AFC, I think both of us have the Colts.
Yep.
And then for the NFC, I have the Rams, and you have the 49ers.
Absolutely. Although...
So same division there for the 4 seed. I just think the Rams maybe take a bit of a step back after winning the Super Bowl. The worst of the division leaders doesn't mean they're a bad team. Just think the 3 teams in front of them could do better. And then the Colts, just having the AFC South winner as the 4 seed just makes sense.
Just those other teams are, I still think, a level above the Colts.
And then we can just do wild card for each conference and like
seed
for this. My wild card in order, so 5, 6, 7. I have the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Dolphins in the AFC. I think the Dolphins, I don't know. Bengals missing the playoffs, Titans missing the playoffs, Patriots who made the playoffs last year, Raiders, those, and then Steelers. So a lot of turnover in this AFC playoff bracket for me. I just like the Dolphins. I think they could be that 7 seed. They were even in the race last year, and now I think they're a better team this year. And then the 2 leftover AFC East teams, or AFC West teams in the Chiefs and Chargers, 5 and 6.
Now, my wild card for that is the 5 seed. I have the Broncos. If they're not winning the division, they're coming second, and I see them as again, in that division, it's a very tight division, but I honestly see the 3 teams beating up on the Raiders too much, where they're going to completely fall out. They might not even reach 9 wins this year, 7 wins. So I have my Broncos at 5, and then at the 6, I have Chiefs, and then at 7, the Ravens. I see the Patriots falling out. I see the Dolphins not quite making it. I see the Ravens, Chiefs, and Broncos as just a step above teams like the Patriots and the Titans and the Dolphins and those types of teams.
Mm-hmm. And then in the NFC, my wild card at 5, I have the Saints, 6, I have the 49ers, and 7, I have the Vikings. So the only difference in playoffs teams between last year and this year is the Cardinals missing and the Vikings making it. Other than that, the other 6 teams were playoff teams last year. Oh, and the Cowboys, I guess. So the Saints didn't make the playoffs last year.
Cowboys.
So then Saints over Cowboys, I guess.
Yeah, for me, I have the 5 seed being the Packers. They're still good. It's still Aaron Rodgers. It's still that defense. It's still the coaching staff. 6 seed, made before week 1, Cowboys. I had them facing the Buccaneers week 1, and I think that would have been maybe one of the best week 1 or wild card matchups that there could have been, but sadly with the Dak injury, that Cowboys pick does not look great anymore. And then my 7 seed was the Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions. A little bit of a tough schedule, probably the toughest in the league, and facing the Eagles week 1, it's going to be an uphill battle for them all season, I feel like. With a great roster, but it'll still be an uphill battle.
In wild card.
Yeah.
And then in the wild card for the playoffs, I have in the first round in the AFC, I have the Ravens beating the Dolphins, I have the Broncos beating the Chargers, and the Chiefs beating the Colts. I think those are all pretty I guess, so the Broncos game. So the Ravens at home against the Dolphins. The Dolphins are the bottom team to make the division, or to make the playoffs. I think Ravens will take care of them. I think Chiefs will beat the Colts, take care of them. But then Broncos, Chargers, Broncos are at home. I'll take the home team. I think if they do have it figured out, they'll have it figured out by the playoffs and they'll be solid.
Absolutely. Now, my first round matchups for that would be Chargers, Ravens, and then I have the Chargers winning that at home. I think it would be too easy. Well, easy's the wrong word whenever you have to face Lamar Jackson, but I think it would be too easy for that defense to match up against the Ravens offense, where they only really have to contain Lamar for a game, and then they're on to the next round. Mm-hmm. Then I have the Bengals Chiefs. I actually have the Bengals upsetting the Chiefs this year. I think it's another case of just not enough options. I mean, we'll see what Juju brings as well. I think he could emerge as a legit number one wide receiver for them.
AFC Championship rematch.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the Bengals go over again. And then the other matchup would be Colts-Broncos. I have the Broncos winning. They're just a level above them.
Mm-hmm. For NFC in the first round, or in the wild card, I have the Vikings beating the Packers. So even though I have the Packers as that top team in the division, I think the Vikings upset them coming into Lambeau. And yeah, just like what we saw in week 1, I think the Vikings take that. And then I have the 49ers beating the Eagles. So far, 2 wildcard teams have upset the division winners, but now the division winner takes the win as the Rams beat the Saints in a previous NFC Championship rematch. I think that'll be a good game, but the Rams take it.
Yeah, for me, I have the Rams versus Eagles as my first matchup there, and I actually have the Rams winning that. They just have the experience, and they have that roster. They're too good still. I see them advancing. Then the other matchup I had was Cowboys-Buccaneers, which now looks like a very easy Buccaneers win. But at the time, I had the Cowboys winning. I had Tom slowing down a bit in his final year, especially once we reached the playoffs. Like, this is a 45-year-old QB.
Cowboys take him out.
And then the Cowboys take him out. Yeah, it could have been the year. Like, the roster looks good. 2 good backs, good wide receivers, good defense, especially with Micah Parsons. And then Dak, who just looks like he broke his hand.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, he'll be back for the playoffs if they are in that race.
I don't have them in that race anymore, so it's tough to gas them up over the Buccaneers at this point.
Yeah.
And then my final matchup is the 49ers-Packers, and I had the 49ers going over the Packers. And if they were to still match up at this point, at the end of the year, even with the loss of Eli Mitchell, I still might go that same way.
He'll be back.
Yeah. But with him being gone for the regular season, mostly, I still see them as a team that could beat the Packers, and the Packers known for choking as well.
Mm-hmm. And then in the second round, I have in the AFC, the Bills finally beat the Chiefs. 2 years in a row now, the Bills season has ended to the hands of Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. They finally get their revenge, move on to the AFC Championship, where they will play the Broncos, who take care of Lamar Jackson, and the Ravens on the road, setting up a Bills-Broncos AFC Championship.
Well, that's funny. So I didn't reseed mine. I didn't really know how that would end up, but I had the Bills going over the Chargers heading into that second round, which probably wouldn't happen with reseedings, but either way, Bills are going to win the second round. That's what I really believe. No matter who they face, they look too good. And then I also have them facing the Broncos in that AFC Championship game. I see the Broncos going over the Bengals. Again, they're too good, and the Bengals, I think they'll reach the second round, and then that post-Super Bowl, like, making the Super Bowl, that hangover will reach them, and the wheels will fall off at that point. And then, and then for that round, I guess we'll talk about the championships as well, because there's less matchups. I have the Bills going over the Broncos. I truly believe that this is the year the Bills at least make the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. I have the Bills over the Broncos winning the AFC. And then to the NFC in the divisional, I have the 49ers beating the Rams. So a rematch of last year's NFC Championship. 49ers take it this year. Obviously, 49ers deep in the playoffs now. So with Eli Mitchell out and losing to the Bears week 1, that could be a pick that looks bad when it's all said and done. And then my other matchup, I have the Buccaneers beating the Vikings. And then in the NFC Championship, we have Buccaneers, 49ers, and I think Tom, in his final season, back to the Super Bowl.
Back to the Super Bowl. So that sets up a Bills-Bucks Super Bowl for you.
My 2 favorite teams in the league, conveniently enough.
2 of the best constructed rosters in the league, so it's not too bad picks. For me, the NFC, the Vikings would face the Rams, and I could see the Rams going over. While I do think the Vikings are going to be very good, that 1 seed, I think this Rams roster is still better than the Vikings roster. And who I think the Vikings are going to be is a very good regular season team, but a second round exit of a team. And then I had the 49ers going over the Cowboys to set up a rematch in the NFC Championship game between the Rams and the 49ers. And I had the Rams going over them again because I don't think it's the year for Trey to go to the Super Bowl, but I really think in his young career, we could see him in the Super Bowl in his first 5 seasons.
Oh, for sure. I think we probably even will. So yeah, and then in the Super Bowl, I have the Buffalo Bills defeating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And I have the Bills going over the Rams. So we have a consensus pick on our Super Bowl champ, which, no surprise, I think that's probably everyone's favorite. But
it's the favorite, and for a reason.
Yeah, but it does lead to 2 very fun matchups. The Buccaneers and Bills and the Rams and Bills, I think, are the 2 teams that match up like the best. Like, those would be my 2 favorite Super Bowls.
No, I think, and then if you look at it, Tom Brady tormented the Bills so many times when he was in New England.
So many times.
He kind of owned the AFC East, so it would kind of be poetic for the Bills' first Super Bowl to end Tom Brady's career. I think that would be very nice for me as a fan. And then now we can go into our awards.
Yeah, get into our player-specific predictions, which are probably more fun.
Mm-hmm. Should we go in like start with MVP or finish with MVP?
I'd start with MVP. Go MVP, then finish Coach of the Year.
Okay. So for the MVP, I have Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. Feeling good about that pick after week 1. I just think if he's the NFC, or if he's the number 1 seed in the AFC, he's going to be most suited to get that. I think the offense kind of is Josh Allen, obviously a lot of talent on it, but he just elevates it to a whole nother level. And then my kind of other candidates to make note of, Aaron Rodgers. I think if the Packers are good again this season, he's going to be another candidate.
He's always a candidate, too.
And then Justin Herbert of the Chargers.
Yeah, those are good picks. I have Herbert winning MVP this year. I do think Josh Allen and the Bills will be the number 1 seed in the entire NFL. But I think voters are going to look at him and look at his offense and look at expectations and think to themselves, well, Herbert had similar numbers, definitely won't have the rushing numbers, but will easily match his passing numbers. I think they'll look at that, and then they'll look at how if the Chargers finish above the Chiefs and Broncos, and they might pick him as the upset pick to be the best QB in the NFL and the MVP. While Josh Allen probably will have the best season, I think Herbert will be picked as the MVP. But my other MVP candidates are, of course, Josh Allen. He's so good. He is so talented. And my other one, which is a bit more of an upset pick, I have Jalen Hurts coming 3rd in that MVP race. I think this is the year he steps up. He has that running upside and passing upside. And that Eagles offense looks tremendous. I mean, putting up 38 points in week 1, it's definitely... it helps the bias, but that offense just looks so good. And 2nd-year QBs and 3rd-year QBs win this award a lot.
Mm-hmm. I think if you're looking at trends and stuff like that, Patrick Mahomes winning MVP and then Lamar Jackson winning MVP.
Both in their second years.
Hurts in his 3rd year. Second full year as a starter, I think. Definitely.
He was behind Wentz in his first year.
Yeah. I think that if the Eagles show enough and are like a big threat and take that leap that everybody kind of wants to see them take, then I think Hurts would be, the guy to look at, because I think this Eagles team kind of, depends on him. If he's a good enough quarterback, they can have a great team. But if he is a shit quarterback,
if his arm isn't there, then no, it doesn't work out. But I really think, especially what we saw week 1, the arm looks great. The legs look great, and that offense just looks so good.
Offensive player of the year?
I went no QBs in this one. I tried to focus on other of the skill positions. So I'm a Panthers fan, so of course I have to represent C-Mac, Christian McCaffrey. He's my winner of it this year. A full, healthy season. He's a guy that can rush and receive for 1,000+ yards in the same year. I think there's no player in the NFL that really impacts the game like he does in every offensive aspect. Mm-hmm. And he already showed it in week 1 scoring a touchdown. And he's a guy that averages a touchdown a game.
Yep. And then for your...
So my other 2 players for that, I had John Taylor He's last year's winner, so of course I gotta have him in there for the repeat. He's still so talented. He's so good with his legs. And then my other pick is Justin Jefferson. I think he should also be a consensus pick. He is my closest one to Christian McCaffrey to win the award. And week 1, he put up a really big showing. He wants to win that award, it looks like.
Yeah, I have Justin Jefferson winning the Opoi. I just think he is going to get that ball a lot, especially, I think they had an injury. I think Osborne, their third receiver. No, I don't know. Somebody got hurt in that Vikings offense, but Justin Jefferson's still going to get all the targets anyways.
And Dalvin Cook could take a step back, too.
Cook could take a step back. And then for my other candidates, I have McCaffrey as well. Derrick Henry, if he's able to, he was on pace last year to be the Opoi, probably.
He was on pace to get over 2,000 yards rushing again.
Yeah, and then I have Jamar Chase as another candidate. I think he now, and then especially with T. Higgins being out with a concussion, I think the door opens for him to have more crazy weeks this season than he did last season.
And he had quite a few.
I think his floor is pretty good, and his ceiling is crazy high.
Yeah, he'd be my fourth. He will finish, and this is a will. This is my hot take. He'll finish as the second best wide receiver in the league. He'll pass guys like Adams and Kupp by the end of the year. It'll be Jefferson, then Chase. I just think he's so talented, and like you said, T going down especially, and Burrow primed for a big year. It's a huge connection. I think he can be that second best wide receiver in the league. Not Opoi yet.
Yeah. For Depoy, I have Aaron Donald of the Rams winning it. I just feel like he's the safest pick always. He's just incredible. For my candidates, Myles Garrett, I think he could win it. I think he probably will win a Depoy in his career.
I agree.
Cleveland team, they're going to be on defense a lot, so his numbers could look worse just because of point totals. And then guy like TJ Watt, who's now gone down, and then Micah Parsons as well as another guy to look out for.
Yeah, the Aaron Donald's a great pick. I didn't really consider him this year, coming off his retirement buzz. I didn't really consider him as a legitimate candidate, but he's still that guy. I could definitely see that. I think that's a really good pick. He's a guy I didn't really consider. My winner this year, and this is the risky pick, this is who I think is going to prove everyone. He was mentioned earlier, Micah Parsons. He looks so primed to be just the face of defense in the entire NFL. Mm-hmm. Just how outspoken he is, and he seems to have a good head on his shoulders, and he plays for the Dallas Cowboys. So much mainstream attention. He's primed for a huge year, and now that's a team that will be on defense a lot, losing Dak, having to punt it away, scoring field goals instead of touchdowns, stuff like that. We're going to get a lot more Micah Parsons action, which, again, like you said with Myles Garrett, could hurt his cause, but I think it'll help his cause. Mm-hmm. My other two picks for that were TJ Watt, of course, last year's winner. He's so talented. Or was it Aaron Donald last year?
It was TJ Watt.
Yeah, TJ Watt tying the sack record last year. He's so talented. With the pec injury, though, that he suffered in week 1, does not look great anymore, but, hoping for the best. And my other pick is kind of more of an upset pick, Khalil Mack. I just think with that new team and all the attention that Bosa brings, he's going to have a much easier time of it. He's never really been the second best player on a defensive line like that, so he could prove everyone wrong. Plus, he's 31, 32, so it's kind of his last great year.
Yep. Moving on to Offensive Rookie of the Year. I have Chris Olave of the Saints taking that. I think the Saints, even though they have Kamara and Mark Ingram, I think with Jameis being their quarterback that they're going to throw the ball. And I think all three of their receivers, Mike Thomas, Jarvis Landry, and Olave, are going to be, good products of that. I think it's been a receiver. Last year was Jamar. Year before it was Jefferson. Year before, I couldn't tell you.
If there's no good young QBs that take a huge step, it goes to a wide receiver most of the time.
Mm-hmm. I think it was Kyler the year before Justin.
And this is a year where we don't really see too many hype young quarterbacks. I'll just say I also have Olave winning that award. Mm-hmm. Again, that offense looks good.
Yeah.
And Jameis is a guy that could throw for 30 touchdowns and 4,000 yards. Someone's got to catch those.
I think Olave is also pretty NFL ready. He looks comfortable, even in his first game, even in preseason. I think the Ohio State product is gonna fit in very nicely with the Saints and be a big part of that offense. And then for other candidates, I have Kenny Pickett. just because if a quarterback has a great season as a rookie, they usually give it to him, and I feel like he's most in line. If Trubisky, by week 5, they're frustrated enough where Pickett gets thrown in there, I think that could be a story that people run with. And then Damien Pierce of the Texans, I think he could get the best workload of every rookie running back. Not saying he's the best rookie running back, but I think he could be that workhorse running back for the Texans. So yeah.
Yeah, some guys that I'm keeping my eye on too are guys like Pickett and also Pickens. I think if the award's going to go to a wide receiver, it would go to Pickens or Olave, and I think that's going to be just a huge storyline throughout the league. I just like the upside that Jameis brings, more so than a Trubisky Pickett rotation at QB. So that's why I have Olave winning. My honorable mentions, I guess, would be guys like Dameon Pierce, who could see a huge workload, and Breece Hall, who, for that Jets team, very young offense, lost their quarterback, so they could turn to him a lot more. Week 1, Pierce and Hall did not really show out too much.
It usually takes a little while for rookie running backs to break on, get used to their offense, get comfortable.
So that's nothing panic-worthy yet.
I don't think so. Defensive Rookie of the Year. My pick is Aiden Hutchinson. The reason I made that pick was just because I feel like he has the most opportunity to put up numbers, as I feel like he's pretty NFL ready as well. Being in Detroit, it's a good story. He's from the Michigan area, and I think he's gonna play a lot of snaps. So I just think he could easily win it. But my other two picks, Sauce Gardner of the Jets, who had a great week 1. There was some number that he only allowed like 1 reception or something like that on his targets in week 1. He's really good. And then Trayvon Walker of the Jags, obviously the number 1 pick, but he had a great week 1 as well, sacking Carson Wentz, and then with a really nice pick on Carson Wentz as well. He is a playmaker, but again, I just feel like for it to be someone on the Jaguars, I feel like the Lions can have, even though they put up got 38 points put up against them, I feel like just because the Lions defense is maybe a little...
I mean, it looks better than the Jaguars.
A little more... Yeah, I mean, Jaguars... I'd say of the 3 teams, the Jets probably have the best defense.
Honestly.
So it's hard to pick Defensive Rookie of the Year just because a lot of the high draft picks go to very bad defenses. Yeah. But yeah, Hutchinson is my pick.
Yeah, those are my same 3 picks. I guess to be contrarian, I'm going to pick Trayvon Walker, especially after that week 1. He was so good. He very clearly had an aura to him on the field too, of he just took a lot of attention, and as he said, he's one of those playmakers where I think the story for Aiden Hutchinson is so good, and he probably will win it based off that, but I think Trayvon Walker is so talented, and he's that number 1 guy, and with the attention Aiden Hutchinson's getting, Trayvon Walker will probably end up with a chip on his shoulder and try extra hard, which is nothing you can measure, but I think he might get a little chip on his shoulder with the attention Hutchinson will get this season. And of course, honorable mention to Sauce Gardner. Incredible name, and an incredible week 1.
Yeah. Now, comeback player of the year. So a couple candidates. I have Jameis winning this one. So 2 Saints winning awards. Just because torn ACL, I believe, was the injury last year. Yep. If the Saints make the playoffs and he is solid as the quarterback, good TD to INT ratio, he has an arm where he can put up numbers. He was the NFL passing leader a few seasons ago in Tampa Bay. I think he wins the award without question.
Yep.
But, CMC, another guy, if he can stay healthy the whole season, I think he's a good candidate. Derrick Henry as well, who got injured last season. Baker Mayfield, who's injured last year and kind of just like thrown
Not
away
great.
by the NFL. And then another guy who's a rookie, but Brian Robinson Jr., who was shot then in good conditions and now looks on track to be able to play week 5.
Which could be a huge story.
If he could be the number 1 rookie running back from the time he steps on the field, that's a very short-term comeback player of the year, whereas the other guys are kind of like big injuries last season. It's rare you see a rookie win the comeback player of the year, but another guy to keep your eye on.
It is pretty extreme circumstances too, so it definitely helps his cause. I see big things for him no matter what, whether or not it's whether or not he plays or not this season too. I still expect huge things out of him. My comeback players of the year, of course, were Jameis Winston, my pick. He's such a personality, too, which helps his cause so much, as everyone wants to see him succeed. I want Jameis to be good. I'm sure you do, too. And for the NFL to get that guy back, just playing for them again, making funny interviews, it'll be huge. And then, of course, he's talented. Mm-hmm. And with this Saints offense, it looks better than the Buccaneers offense he was the passing leader on. So I see no reason. Of course, CMC, Derrick Henry, those guys are primed just to be big offensively anyways. Mm-hmm. Another guy I talked about already, but I want to look at the defensive side of the ball, Khalil Mack. He had a foot injury last year and played for the Bears. So he missed almost every year, but he was huge at the start of last season, starting on a monstrous pace, on pace to be up there with TJ Watt and other guys for sack leaders. So I think if he could come back this year, new situation, he could be an upset player for comeback player of the year.
Yeah, and then coach of the year, the final award, another very poorly timed to have this guy as my coach of the year, but Hackett of the Broncos, he had a bit of a bad play.
Not a good week one.
Not a good week one.
One of my worst people of week one. He just butchered that game, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, he was outcoached by Pete Carroll in his first game. I just kind of new head coach coming into the Broncos. They were my highest team of like a new head coach. I just like the storyline. But now my other two picks I'm kind of liking more. Kevin O'Connell of the Minnesota Vikings and Mike McDaniel of the Miami Dolphins.
Those are solid picks. I don't really have a winner picked, I guess my winner I'll get into last because I also have Mike McDaniel as a candidate. I think if the Dolphins finish as a top 3 offense, he could win it. Just because he's coming into that situation as an offensive-minded coach and a guy who's been under Shanahan forever, who's always had great offenses. So I think an upset pick would be Mike McDaniel if that Dolphins offense is what I think it can be. A top 5 offense, but not my pick. Another guy to keep an eye on is Sean McDermott, just because I think he'll coach the best team in the league. Mm-hmm. But my winner will be Brandon Staley for the Chargers, the team I think will take that AFC South, or no, AFC West. So, again, it's like the Broncos. That team looks really good. It looks like it has few holes, and it looks like it can honestly be a winning roster. So he's my pick, and again, the league loves offense. Their offense is going to be incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so those are award predictions. For the NFL, I feel like we've covered the NFL pretty good.
Yeah, a little bit more into week one if you want to talk a bit about the Bills. I'll go into the Panthers a bit of, that was a disappointing week, I find. I thought at least the defense would be a bright spot, and they just came out and Jacoby Brissett was beating them. Mm-hmm. Almost every drive. It was disappointing. And they showed fight. They had resolve. They almost came back and then couldn't get a stop when they had to. It was a disappointing week one, in my opinion, for my Panthers.
Yeah. For my Bills, I mean, can't say enough good things. Pretty much the perfect start to the season, coming on the road, beating the Super Bowl champions, shutting them down pretty much, 10 points, 0 in the second half, putting up 31 points. The offense looked very good. Despite 4 turnovers, still being able to blow them out. The Von Miller acquisition looks very good.
He looks incredible. He looks like he's fully transformed that defense.
No, yeah. Just he brings an energy and a level of confidence that I think, makes this Bills defense even better than it, has been in last year as the statistical number 1 defense in the league.
Yeah.
And then I think, there was a bit of shuffling in terms of the skill group in Buffalo, bringing in, rookie running back James Cook, and then losing some receivers like Sanders and Cole Beasley. But I think now Diggs and Davis looks like a legit 1-2 punch. Dawson Knox was quiet in week 1, but he's due to make a play every once in a while.
Big
and then
bust guy.
Singletary looked pretty solid. Zach Moss, not so solid. James Cook, obviously, the fumble on his only carry. I think they kind of just sat him as like a
precautionary,
precautionary, but also just like a teach him a lesson kind of thing.
Understandable.
That's just a coaching moment. I think James Cook can turn around and still have a solid season, though.
Yeah, definitely.
People who, Keenan Allen, little injury, hopefully doesn't keep him out too long.
Yeah, a lot of scary looking injuries.
Derek
but
Barnett on the Eagles out for
Yeah.
the season. That's going to hurt them for sure. He's a good defensive presence. Yeah, I mean, Vikings look great.
Vikings
Packers
so
didn't look great. Saints with a really nice comeback. Very sloppy first half, but in the fourth quarter they looked very good. Niners definitely. I would be worried if I was a Niners fan.
I would be too.
Offense looks like it's struggling a bit.
It looked lost a lot of the times on Sunday.
And yeah, maybe Jimmy G gets a start this year.
Oh, I can see it by week 7 even.
If
Trey
they're
Lance
not
is
rolling. Just
rolling.
not that guy. Obviously the conditions weren't good. The defense looked good. Chicago just made plays when they needed to, and yeah, San Francisco just got down and couldn't get back in the game.
It's never good to overreact to one of those rainy games, but if you're gonna play teams, you gotta expect everything, and if you can't battle through that, then who knows? Mm-hmm. So I'd be worried, especially losing Mitchell. That's gonna be huge. For me, I'll get into my stinker of the week. Game I thought was least impressive was that Buccaneers-Cowboys game. We went that first half without a touchdown, and then Dak gets hurt, and then the Cowboys score on their opening drive or very early into the game, and then don't get anything for the rest of the game. Super disappointing game.
Only team without a touchdown in week 1.
Super disappointing. Incredibly disappointing. And it was the primetime game. Just absolute stinker of the week.
Brady kind of just Brady'd. Didn't really need to do too much to win that game. Did pretty much just about what he needed to. Cowboys D made some stops when they needed to. Micah Parsons, 2 big third down
Micah Parsons
sacks.
looked great out there.
But yeah, and then any other noteworthy?
Well, my game of the week is between 2 games for me. Our Monday night game there, Seahawks versus Broncos. The story going into it was incredible, but that second half, the Seahawks not scoring a single point, I can't have that be my game of the week. But
it's true.
But that final play on 4th and 5 and not going for it, that'll be remembered for the rest of the year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes it huge in the contention of game of the week. But for me, it's got to be Saints-Falcons. It's a close game, high scoring. Taysom Hill was a huge shock. I mean, we know what he does on the football field, but being that quarterback, tight end, running back, and almost losing to the Falcons, just so much going on in that game. There's going to be so many headlines that come out of it.
Yeah, games that had good finishes that maybe weren't a great game altogether. Bengals-Steelers game.
Crazy
finish. The Giants game. Saquon looks back.
Saquon looks better than he was before.
Yeah, I think obviously want to see him do it more than just 1 week, but Saquon looks primed for a big season, and under Brian Dable, who knows what the Giants can do.
And we have a tie.
We have a tie.
We have a tie that was also a huge comeback, as the Colts and Texans tied, both missing field goals in overtime, which is always sad. That always kind of sucks. But before the fourth quarter even started, the Colts were down 20-3. The Texans could have had a huge upset win, and they couldn't pull it off. I don't know what they need to improve there. Maybe it involves giving Damien Pierce the ball more, but that was our tie for week 1 and our first tie of the 2022 season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was a good week around the NFL altogether. Excited for next week. I'd say, lots of surprises, some disappointments. I feel like it's also just too early to tell breakout candidates, stuff like that.
Way too early.
But
if we're going too early, let's see Tua MVP.
Tua MVP, Dolphins 17-0.
Love it.
Yeah, and the Broncos, they need to figure it out. I don't necessarily think they looked bad.
Not bad, but
like
16 points is definitely not a good look.
I think if, even just one of those fumbles at the goal line goes different, though, that's a win for them. And if neither of those fumbles at the goal line happens, they convert, they put up a good amount in the game.
It looks like a blowout.
But I like Russell Wilson's chemistry with Judy and Sutton. I think in the first half of that game I was a little worried, but in the second half they were able to connect on some plays. Javonte Williams, good receiver out of the backfield, 11 receptions for him. So I think Russell Wilson and him will be very familiar with each other. But yeah, Excited for week 2, and it's going to be a good season.
So yeah, that's about it for football news in week 1, but it was a very good week, and you cannot understand how happy I am to have football back.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing beats it.
Long summer, and, MLB is good, but it just, the buzz around the MLB, sports are different when you can talk to people about it, and, only so many people discuss baseball or discuss what's happening in the league right now, whereas NFL, you got millions of people talking about Geno Smith, whereas, sometimes you can't even get 100,000 people to talk about Mike Trout.
Exactly. Speaking of Mike Trout, man's going for history right now.
He's one of the greatest players of all time, widely accepted fact. Always on a shit team, unfortunately. But he has had a crazy week.
7 home runs in 7 straight games. He is one off from tying the record set by guys like Ken Griffey. And I'm pretty sure it was Don Mattingly and one other guy. But just crazy stats. And just to do this, especially in the week that I'm facing him in fantasy baseball, is just insane. It's crazy how talented he is and how much his talents are being taken for granted.
Mm-hmm.
The Angels have to do something here.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing in Ohtani, great, and Rendon, who somehow sucked all season. It's just, I don't know what that team can do anymore.
Yeah.
As especially something that's underrated with that team is that in the first half of the year they had one of the better pitching rotations, and then they went 0-20. It seemed like for there, and had their manager fired. So now they're here where there's really nothing going on with that team, and it's just the Trout show, which
I think the
happens every year.
Angels, much like the Lions, are a team that people just want to see win.
I want to see them win, and they're in the AL.
Yeah. Just a team to root for, just because of Trout specifically. Ohtani as well, fan favorite. But yeah, that's,
Yeah, real quick baseball.
Real quick baseball tidbit, but Mike Trout doing amazing.
And then looking at our AL East race, as we're both Blue Jays fans here, both in Canada. Jays, 2 wins away from being 81-61. They've actually had a huge September so far. Shout out Bo Bichette being our player of the week, I think it was. But the Yankees are 5.5 games ahead of us right now. So we could see coming down the stretch, we're only half a game up on the Rays. So it's going to be really important to keep that spot. And we are still 5 games up from Baltimore, who, sadly, their incredible story, it looks to be running out.
Mm-hmm. And then we will talk about hockey a lot on this podcast. However, it's still the off-season, technically. Not a lot of news other than Nick Suzuki named the captain of the Montreal Canadiens.
Which I love.
It's all coming full circle. It's kind of interesting. They traded Pacioretty for Nick Suzuki, and Pacioretty was the captain at the time.
Yeah.
So they traded a former captain for a future captain. I think Montreal kind of, after making the cup the cup final 2 years ago, has now kind of accepted that they're not a competitive team. So, Suzuki signed long term. He's going into the first year of an 8-year deal, I believe. Perfect time to give him the C, and he's just going to be the heart and soul of the team.
Yeah, which I think he already was.
Yeah, no, I think he was as well. But
he's a class act.
Young leader, class act. But yeah, I think definitely the right choice.
Yeah,
for that
and
pick, if they were going to name it now.
Yeah, and in our slow NFL offseason, or NHL offseason, it's been nice to see a bit of news. And even as a Leafs fan, especially as a Leafs fan, I think Nick Suzuki is the right guy for that completely.
Mm-hmm. Moving on, we have it happened over a week ago.
Just about.
Still a big trade in the NBA that is going to impact the league for years to come.
Years and years.
Between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Utah Jazz. So the full trade details are the Cavaliers receive Donovan Mitchell, who is 26 years old, and the Utah Jazz receive quite the package in return. Colin Sexton, who's 23 years old, Larry Markinen, who's 25 years old, probably going to butcher the pronunciation of this name, even though I knew it at a point in time when college basketball was on my TV, but Ochai Agbaji, definitely not how you pronounce it. He had a nickname that he went by on the broadcast, so that's probably why.
Yeah, the broadcasters couldn't get it either.
He's 22, first round pick last year, and then 3 unprotected firsts and 2 pick swaps.
Which, after the Rudy Gobert trade, I guess this is our precedent for...
Yeah, like when you're a competitive team in the NBA, I think your first round picks are less valuable than they would be in any other league, just because, you know, you're not even going to get a rotation guy at the end of the first round.
Yeah, for the next season.
For most teams.
Unless you're the Warriors and you snipe Jordan Poole at 30.
That's true. You know, they can obviously quickly develop, but when you're a competitive team, you're looking to have the best roster now, and you're not really as patient as you can be when you're a rebuilding team. And now the Jazz have nothing but patience, as this trade, they have 13. I just read the 3 on my notes, but 13 unprotected or lightly protected firsts between now and 2029.
That is crazy.
Which is a lot. They're kind of going the OKC route.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, is them and the Thunder are going to be the teams of the 2040s, it looks like.
Yeah, but even then with, with all these picks, I feel like even with their current roster, they're set up a bit, very nicely for the future with guys like, Colin Sexton, Larry Markinen, who are young.
Yeah, 23, 25.
Oche, also young, 14th overall pick, hasn't even played a game in the NBA. Yeah. And then you got guys like Nikhil Alexander-Walker, a guy they traded for from New Orleans last year. Lots I'm sure I'm forgetting about as well.
Yeah, but it's not a team where the names are going to be good. They're looking to ship guys off still.
They're not competing now, but I definitely think they could have a complete roster, and if a couple of the draft picks hit within the next 2 or 3 years, I think even in 5 or 6 years, the Jazz could be knocking at the door, ready to come back with their first competitive team since the Mitchell Gobert era. I think it was time for that era to be broken up, just because over. I don't think they were gonna win the NBA championship or anything like that. As they had a season where they were the best team in the NBA regular season wise. They were a good team. They produced, but I think they just didn't have enough to win a championship.
Never. And their schemes, their defensive schemes, and how they relied on Rudy and in their offense and defense, it was never gonna be it. I think Rudy on the Timberwolves that's gonna be maybe the most perfect situation he could have entered.
Yeah, I think the Timberwolves last year were a surprise team in how quickly they went from bottom of the league to a team where, they are good television. They are a good team with guys like Anthony Edwards, Cat. They keep D'Lo, and now they have Gobert coming in.
I think one of the most important parts of that offseason could be the keeping of D'Angelo Russell. I think this could be one of his biggest seasons yet, and not as a scorer. His biggest season will always be his All-Star year on Brooklyn, when everyone bought into the D'Lo hype, and it was awesome. What a season that was. But I think as a winner, this is easily going to be his most important year, and even fantasy-wise, he could be one of the top assist leaders in the entire league, passing to guys like Ant and Cat and even Gobert on lobs. There's just so many threats on that offense. Now, what do you think over/under 45 wins for the Minnesota Timberwolves? Over? You're pretty confident on that?
Well, I think they were over last year, and I think they're probably better this year.
All right, we'll move that one up. I think that'll be the number for the Cavs, because they were a 45-win team last year.
Yeah. Well,
but I could see the Timberwolves winning 50 games. And I think that'll be a comfortable over/under for them, 49.5.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're getting into the Timberwolves here, which, they'll be a fun team to talk about. But one of the, the team who's acquiring the superstar player in this trade, the Cleveland Cavaliers, Donovan Mitchell, 24 points per game over his career, 28 points per game in the playoffs in his career, with multiple 50-point outings in the playoffs. He is proven that, he can be a number one scorer on a team. Steady shooting numbers, nothing that'll blow you away. He does shoot the ball a lot just because he was that number one option in Utah, so efficiency maybe goes down a bit. Really good from free throw, just a solid guy. I really like what this does for their roster.
Top 3 shooting guard in the league, without question.
Darius Garland doesn't have to carry the ball the entire time, and I just think it makes them that much scarier. I have it written down here. Potential starting 5 for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Darius Garland at point guard, Donovan Mitchell at shooting guard, Isaac Okoro at the small forward position, which he's a fantastic, two-way player.
Yeah, he's
very
exactly
good
who they
defensively.
need.
And with guys like Garland and Mitchell already in their lineup, you don't really need a scorer from your three. And then the two big men with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. I think you have them both on the floor at the same time. Nothing's really going to go down in the paint. And then you got really good perimeter defenders as well. So
even Mobley covers the perimeter really well. He was one of the best rookie defenders of all time last season. I really see that lineup, that starting five, as one of the top 5 starting fives in the league.
I agree as well. And Garland and Mitchell are two fantastic players, but I think what can catapult this team is Evan Mobley's development, because he can be even better than both of them in a couple years' time, and that's just scary. And that could be a legitimate big three. That
terrifying thought.
Terrifying. And I wrote down here that this is the first legitimate heading into the season Cavaliers team of the 21st century that doesn't have LeBron James on it. So, for so long, when they didn't have LeBron, their management was terrible. They had no idea what to do. They had no idea how to put a team together. But finally, there's some confidence in Cleveland, and I'm really excited about it.
I'm buying it on Cleveland.
Yeah.
I think Garland as well this year. This could be, depending how many shots and assists and ball handling duties are taken from him, could have been, if they didn't pick up Donovan Mitchell, I saw this as a season where Garland could have made an all-NBA team as a point guard. He ended the year last year almost averaging 20 and 12. So a full season of that, and now one of the best backcourts in the league. I honestly think in 5 seasons we could see them in the finals as a 30, 31-year-old Mitchell, a 26-ish year old Garland, and then that front court who are both under 27 still. Such a nasty team. Such a young, talented big four they have going on. And I'm including Jared Allen in that.
Yeah. And the pieces going toward Utah. First, Colin Sexton. He's very good scoring guard. He's, can put the ball in the hoop. But he kind of, outside of his scoring, is a little bit lackluster.
He's going to average.
Only 3.3 assists for his career from a point guard.
He's going to average some
not what you like.
Crazy scoring numbers next year.
He had a great season in 2020, 2021. 24 points per game, 4.4 assists. But yeah, he's not a great defender. He's coming off a knee injury. But yeah, I think his numbers will be inflated in Utah. Another guy they're getting, Lauri Markinen. He's a versatile stretch big. Really, he's 36.4 or .36 .364 from 3-point in his career. So good for a big man. 85% from free throw in his career. Also really good. Not a great blocker for a 7-footer.
No, that's especially because the Cavs played him at small forward a lot last season, experimenting with lineups. He's not a paint defender.
Yeah, and he's more known for his offensive skill set, where I think his numbers are gonna be inflated in Utah as well.
He could see out. He might be a 5 3-pointers made per game type of guy for a big man.
We'll see. We'll see how much they allow him to shoot the ball. And then Oche, the last player in this deal. He was the 14th overall pick in 2022. He was nominee for the Player of the Year last year. He was kind of the face of that Kansas team who did win the national championship. So he's a national champion, bringing in a winning mentality. He's a great scorer, and then just a hustle player, a guy who kind of puts his heart into the game. But I feel like
Utah guy.
I feel like he does, even though he was the 14th overall pick in the draft and could have a bright future in the NBA, I feel like he's one of those college players where you really want to see his game translate to the NBA. Hype, exciting player in college, but what does that mean on the NBA floor when things are a little bit different?
A little slower, and it's a grown man's game compared to college, so it'll be exciting to see what he brings.
He'll be given lots of opportunity too this year. Maybe low-key rookie of the year guy.
Could start potentially him and Sexton as the backcourt, which would be a very suspect defensive backcourt, but very exciting.
Very excited for the NBA season. Like we did with the NFL, we'll have standings predictions, playoff predictions, awards predictions in a later episode. But just now, I think Utah is now setting themselves up for the future with all these draft picks, all these assets that they can do things with, and they still have guys like, you know, Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, Bogdanovich, who they can trade for more picks.
So
and
they could.
I think all three of those guys can fetch a first round pick at least themselves. You know what I mean? Mike Conley probably
on any contender team.
Exactly.
The Lakers especially.
Clarkson, Bogdanovich. I think they're going to continue to move forward with this overhaul. But I'm even though I love Donovan Mitchell, he's my second favorite player in the league behind LeBron James, and loved him in Utah. I'm really excited for him in Cleveland, and even, you know, him on the team made me a bit of a Jazz fan. I'm excited for the Jazz's future as well. I think this is what feels right for Utah. I feel like taking the OKC route feels right for them, whereas, you know, something was just missing in this last, you know, 5 years of the team, even though they, you know, probably one of the better winning percentages in the league in the regular season, couldn't get it done in the playoffs, however.
Yeah. I think a funny question would be the over-under on how many picks the Jazz end up with by the end of the year. For me, I could see them having over 20 first-round picks, which is just an insane thought. And the thoughts that, like, what they can trade with that, because there's no way they would ever develop 20 players. Mm-hmm. It's really exciting what they'll be able to bring to the league, them and OKC. With trades and excitement, I would expect to see both of those teams in headlines for the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm. I think even now, just seeing it done twice, I think the Oklahoma City Thunder have changed the NBA forever, as, you know, with only 2 rounds in the draft, you can gain. Yeah, exactly. You can gain draft capital really easily. You can go from a contending team to a team being set up amazingly for the future with 2 trades like the Utah Jazz have done. So I think there'll be a lot of these kind of speed rebuilds where just, you know, a team is relying on, you know, 5 guys that they drafted in the lottery to hit, and for that to be their core. Yeah. But also, like you said, they're not going to draft 20 guys. They're not going to keep 20 guys. So they're going to have assets to, you know, trade for already established players. And I think, you know, if I was an NBA GM in the state of an in-between kind of, you know,
where
part of my franchise, exactly, where I have a good team but not enough to win the championship, I think, you know, pulling trigger on this kind of style of rebuild is definitely the option that I would do.
Yeah, it definitely looks like small market teams have a legitimate option now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's what they're going to do, because, you know, who's signing in Utah in free agency?
It's teams like them, and it's teams like the Jazz, Grizzlies, Thunder, where the Grizzlies have kind of already done this, where they have 5 to 7 guys that they drafted and have brought up, and now they have a 10-plus man roster of real legitimate NBA players. So it's exciting to see where they go. Hopefully the Jazz and Thunder can trend more towards the Grizzlies than some other teams that we've seen try this. Teams like Minnesota have tried this before and failed. Mm-hmm. Teams like the 76ers with the process, this is very similar to that. It's different. Mm-hmm. The process was more about trading the players after they were drafted rather than just acquiring picks. But we see things like that have kind of failed, and the original vision for those, like Minnesota's original process with Wiggins and Towns and Levine, failed, and the 76ers with Harris and Embiid and, like,
Simmons.
Yeah, Simmons also, I would say, failed, because now it's a completely different looking team.
I would agree. Excited for NBA and NHL to pick up. Even though we have lots to talk about already, there'll be even more to talk about in a month's time. Just, you know, really thrilled to get things started. We love just talking about sports. Kind of, you know, it's second language to us. We can, you know, see things as they develop and get excited for things 7 years in the future. Just you know, in hypothetical situations, just talking about things. So we're both really excited about this podcast, and, you know, it can grow, and how, you know, that it's going to look in years' time, because I think we're both, you know, dedicated and motivated to putting out a good product and being able to kind of share our thoughts with the sports world.
Very excited. And once our football, basketball, hockey are all in full swing, the segments for each will be much shorter. It won't be as bloated for a single sport. So very excited for once October rolls around and we get all of our sports rolling at the same time. There's nothing not to look forward to now.
Oh, yeah. I think, you know, it's a good time to be a sports fan. And, I mean, not really much else to say.
No, that's all. It looks like That'll be the end of the first episode of the Sports Podcast, brought to you by the CollingsThodeNetwork. We do thank you for joining us today, especially if you've made it to this point. It was a bit of a long listen as the first episode, but we'll see how they go hopefully next week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Looks like that'll be when they're uploaded.
Yeah, we'll try to keep a consistent schedule. However, we're two students in university and college, so, busy schedules. It's a lot to keep up with, but, a priority for us is being able to put this out, hopefully weekly, for you guys to enjoy.
Yeah, so thank you for listening, especially if you got here, and hopefully we'll see you next week.